Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason here with you on a Monday night. If you're joining us live, thanks for hanging out with us here in this cold, dark off-season. Trey, the weather kind of turned cold and dark today. We had really flown by the second half of winter here in the Lone Star State, and then suddenly I woke up and it was like 33 degrees outside. So with that, how we doing tonight, my friend?
Yeah, a little colder than when we recorded this time last week. It was a nice spring weekend a couple weekends ago. And then, of course, the weekend that I decided to put off my yard work and my outside stuff, the wind shifts out of the north and we get gloomy winter back. But we're like 2 weeks away from daylight savings, I think, as we're recording this. So
Yes,
that is huge. That means post-work 9 is back on the table.
that's right.
And that makes everything right in the world. I don't care what is wrong in your world. If you hate your job, if you are coming home and you're just really mad at some progress not being made on chores that you need to do, go play a quick 9 after work. Everything's going to be fine.
That's right. Stroll in the park seldom leaves you as angry and disappointed, maybe as when you win in, unless you're just terrible at golf. Which, hey, we've all been there. Sometimes it happens. One thing I discovered today, Trey, looking at my calendar, was the first time that I was aware that daylight savings time is 2 weeks away from us. This is the third consecutive year, and I don't know how I've done this, but this is the third consecutive year that I have been scheduled to teach Sunday school, kids Sunday school, on daylight savings day. So, listen, some
Who
say
did you
Jules
make
in my
mad in the kids ministry to draw?
well, listen, I'm kind of wondering if this is church discipline. I thought I was in good standing, but evidently I might need to have a discussion with my pastor, figure out why I keep getting the short end of the stick. Travis, if you're listening, help a guy out, man. 3 years in a row. But with that, Trey, the subject for tonight is not my lesson plan for 2 weeks' time. It is, of course, going all the way back to the summer of 2025 to grade our Big 12 and ACC predictions. And I'll say this. We said this last time. We'll say this again. Of course, when you create content, you're going to get some wrong. And we did get some wrong. We'll get to all of that. But I have to say, we hit the mark more times than not with the Big 12 and the ACC, in my humble opinion. And that is not easy to do. I mean, the Big 12, we literally call the conference on Fury Road, right? I mean, it is known for chaos. We didn't know who was going to step into the power vacuum that inevitably was left by Clemson. And I still think when you balance everything out, I think we came out ahead here.
I absolutely agree. I'm going to pat us on the back for the long hours that we did researching these Big 12 and ACC teams because it did pay off. We missed on a couple, like we of course will. We missed on a big one with Clemson, like you already mentioned.
Yes.
But I think overall, I was looking at our graphics that we put out right before the season, our Big 12 and ACC preview graphics, and basically the top half of the standings, short of a couple out of order, we did pretty good, especially in the ACC. The Big 12, you just throw it in a blender and see who survives. Like, no one obviously could have predicted that Sam Leavitt would go down for as much as he did at Arizona State. No one could have predicted that. Some might have predicted that Baylor wouldn't live up to the hype, but Baylor was getting a lot of hype. We'll get into all that in just a second, but I'm proud of us for year. This is our fourth season, I think. I think we finally have a good bearing on things to kind of sift through the noise and sift through the hype that some of these programs get. That's maybe not substantiated by actual on the field results yet.
Yeah. And I tell you what, going back to the YouTube comments and seeing, fans of programs, certainly that we were supporting, kind of hyping up. I think of Houston, that was really fun to see all of the affirmation come true there. And, some of the comments that we get when, we disagree, we say, hey, this team might be a little lower on our totem pole than it might be on yours. It is a little cathartic to come through the other side and go, you know what? No, we did know what we were talking about. Of course, if you had a take along with us in the summer, we'd love to have you revisit that. You can do that in the YouTube chat. You can scroll or swipe up, I should say, on the Spotify app. If you're listening after the fact, write us a tweet at 3TechPod. You can find us there. Our Instagram is where those graphics primarily live if you want to go and fully revisit our preview section from just a couple months ago. But Trey, just like last week, I'll give you dealer's choice here. Would you want to start with the Big 12? You want to start with the ACC? And you want to start with picks we got right or picks we got wrong?
Let's start positive and let's start with where more of our local teams are. So let's go Big 12, what we got right. And if I may, you teased it just a second ago. Can we start with the Houston Cougars?
Bang, man. Yes, absolutely we can. I tell you what, Houston was a team that was easy to believe in because Willie Fritz is such a good coach, but he went to work immediately putting together that roster, and they were like the second worst offense in the country in 2024. They literally averaged 14 points a game. I mean, it was impossible for the Cougars to score. So we knew that just statistically they had to improve past that point. It was just a question of how many points would they score. And what we dug into in that preview, Trey, was we looked at the offensive line. They really made an effort in the portal to go upgrade the offensive line. They brought in a new quarterback in Connor Wegman from Texas A&M. You and I both felt like that was probably going to help him flourish, help him develop, and put him in an offense that was going to be more up tempo. Right, Wegman ran kind of an air raid style offense at Bridgeland High School in the Southeast Texas area. We knew that if he got out of kind of the pro style offense and all the change that he underwent with all the offensive coordinators during his time in College Station, it felt like he would get into a rhythm. And he didn't always do it with his arm, but we also got to see him do it with his legs this past year. The defense really made some nice strides for Houston as well. It just felt like all the arrows were pointing in the right direction. And, we led with them in our preview series as Houston is a team on the hunt. Could they be the biggest sleeper in the country, right? Could they be the next Indiana? And while we certainly never predicted them to, go to the college football playoff, it was incredible to see them jump right into that kind of second layer, that B tier of contention. Had a big game early in the season against Texas Tech for jockeying for position there in the Big 12. I felt like we nailed that pick on the head, and it was just really fun to watch the Cougars blossom all throughout the season.
Yeah, and we pointed out that Willie Fritz in year two of his illustrious careers and different stops has usually been a pretty nice little jump that he's enjoyed, even no matter how year one goes. And those transfer portal additions, man, they were really fantastic on both sides of the ball. You mentioned Connor Wigman, and it really was his legs. 11 touchdowns off the ground for Connor Wigman this year. That seemed impossible if you watched him at A&M and how they just didn't use that obvious weapon that he had. You mentioned the offensive style switch. I think just not making him think as much. Just see read, get ball out, and go. Didn't always work. He did throw some interceptions, but you took way more good than there was bad with Connor Wigman. You also had Dean Connors running the football coming over from Rice. That was a huge crosstown addition. Tanner Kozel, the tight end, coming down from Wisconsin, I think it was, to reunite with the former coach, I believe. So really, really nice pickups. Kozel, I think, was Wisconsin by way of somewhere else, right? Or do I have that backwards?
Ball State.
That's right. And then he was committed to Wisconsin and then decommitted, I think, and came to Houston or something along those lines. Doesn't matter. He balled out for the Cougars this year. And defensively, I think that's where our biggest question marks were, but they shut down some of the better offenses in the Big 12. You mentioned that Texas Tech game. It wasn't necessarily Tech just running away. The scoreboard looks lopsided at the end, but they bowed up in the red zone. They held Tech to like 20 field goal attempts, I think it was, in that game.
Yes.
And just really showed out in a really positive way. So Willie Fritz is building a really nice little program down in H-Town, and they certainly have the talent nearby to continue to build that up. And even if that talent gets away from them the first time, they're going to be able to recruit them back home if they don't get playing time right away.
Yeah, and that's kind of the secret to Fritz's sauce, I think, since the transfer portal came about, is he's said, hey, if you go somewhere else and you either don't get the playing time or it's not the right fit, come home, right? Come home. At Tulane, he was very adept at recruiting the Houston area kids, the New Orleans kids, everybody from the boot to come play for the Green Wave. Now he's right back in Houston, where he's very familiar from, has built up a base, has a lot of experience there. It's a elite place to build a program. And so with that, I guess the only other question regarding Houston is, do you believe that progress continues now into 2026 and maybe beyond?
I don't see why not. I think they're going to be right there when we talk about contenders in the Big 12 next year. They're certainly going to be right in the middle of the conversation. Now, the difference is they did benefit a little bit from the schedule this year.
Sure.
When we do our schedule breakdown article that'll come out this spring from the Big 12, I'm sure it won't be as favorable as it was this year for the Cougars. But it's a great opportunity. You just because you have, how many times have we previewed a team and said, hey, they have the schedule to win 8, 9, 10 games, and then they don't live up to it on the talent and execution side of it, and they lose to teams they shouldn't. That's a sign that you have good coaching, good foundations. Oh yeah, and you're bringing your quarterback back for an encore presentation next year. So I'm in on Houston again next year. I think they're going to be right in the thick of things and competing for an actual conference title seriously in 2026.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'll be watching how they replace some key guys on the defensive side. Corey Platt Jr., outstanding linebacker, ends up going to Texas Tech in the portal. We'll talk about the Red Raiders in just a second. But overall, I really do like the direction that Houston's heading. Obviously, trust Willie Fritz. And yeah, you're going to get one more ride with this offense, which I think is a lot of fun. So if you're in H-Town, you're looking for a reason to believe. We started the Cougar hype, I think, basically over Christmas of 2024 and rode that for a full calendar year. We're doubling down. We're riding back, punch the ticket again, and let's root for the Cougars in 2026. Let's talk about Texas Tech next, Trey, because finally all three of us had a swing of the pinata. All three of us at some time put all of our chips in on the roulette wheel and said it's coming up Texas Tech. I do have to toot my own horn a little bit here. I was the most patient of the three of us, and I did come away with the jackpot at the end of this season. Texas Tech goes 11-1. They do win the Big 12. How impressed were you with Texas Tech's ability to finally put it all together when the opportunity presented itself the best? The first year, obviously, without Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think
Or
they
second
lived
year.
up. Yeah, second year, but they really lived up to the hype, and that's always what you're gonna as we see these teams kind of build themselves up in this new era of college football with the portal and NIL, and obviously much was made about how Tech built their roster. We don't have to rehash all those conversations here. We had a nice little video title that drew a few people off sides in the previous season intentionally. I'll own up to that, but you watch the video, and if you watched it through, you understood our point that Tech was attempting to, buy their way into contention. There's nothing wrong with that. But as we see these teams do that, and there's certainly going to be teams that try to copy the Texas Tech model, whether or not they're doing it in this cycle or they're trying to find their own Cody Campbell. Copying the model off the field and actually executing on the field, we're going to find those are two very, very different things. We've already seen that at certain schools not too far from Texas Tech, maybe even in the same conference as Texas Tech. But actually living up to the hype on the field, especially when you're getting all the publicity for what you're doing off the field to acquire the talent, is going to be very, very difficult. And I really credit Joey Mack and his staff for blocking out the noise, getting a bunch of guys together that hadn't played together before this year, and moving them all, getting them rowing the boat in the same direction. Just because they're talented and have those stars next to their name doesn't mean they're all going to automatically be moving in that same direction. So credit to that coaching staff for getting it done and getting the most out of that talent. They got all the juice out of that orange that they could and rode it to a playoff appearance. And, obviously it didn't work out for them. It didn't go well when they got to the Orange Bowl, but getting there and capitalizing on the talent in that, when it's a 1-year window, is certainly nothing to sneeze at.
Which pet are you stiff arming right now?
Am I stiff arming?
For a second, I thought you were like pushing maybe the
No,
cat.
I'm just like, I told you off camera, I'm like in studio transition right now. And so I'm like in my bedroom and I'm kind of like leaned over because I'm looking down at my laptop. So I'm like basically in a 2-point stance as a defensive lineman right now. I'm just trying to get through it.
No, hey, carry on, good and faithful soldier there. I thought maybe a pet had crept into the room, was attempting to investigate the keyboard, maybe the microphone. I wasn't sure how much defense you were playing there.
Would not be the first time that happened, but thankfully I think I've eradicated all the pets from this room. At least they're
still living. Yes.
Yeah, PETA, get off my back. They're still living. They're fine.
That's right.
I'm just in a really weird physical position, so we're rolling with it.
That's right. If you're cold, they're cold. They're just in another room, fully being taken care of. No, I think you're right. To get us back to the point, I think one of the big questions we had about Texas Tech's offense was, one, would the offensive line be improved? Right, Cody Campbell went out and he bought a bunch of upgrades at that position. Ironically, the Red Raiders actually ended up giving up like an equivalent amount of sacks that they did over the last 2 years, season to season. There was almost no change, but obviously, Texas Tech's offense much more effective in the regular season. I hear you, comment section. But Baron Morton stayed mostly healthy throughout the year. They had Will Howard or Will Howard. Will. Why am I
Hammond.
blanking on? Say that again.
Will Hammond.
Will Hammond, yes,
Yeah.
wrong age. Will Hammond, our boy, come in and lead that win over Utah. Had some electric moments before he got hurt, but then ultimately Baron Morton, I know, did not go out on a great note, but did have that championship moment against BYU, winning the Big 12 championship game. Got that iconic photo marching off the field in victory, fists raised with his head coach. So I think a lot to like, a lot to build on. Now the question will be, can Tech give us version number 2, right? Can they build on it? Can they not only get back to the playoff, can they score some points? And can they win a playoff game and prove that, hey, we can stack up with the best of the SEC and obviously the Big Ten now, who's won 3 straight national championships?
Can they score a point in a playoff game? That's the new benchmark. But yeah, no, and it's going to be very interesting. We used to say this about Ole Miss every year until they finally broke through, right? If you
Sure.
are building through the portal and amassing all this talent in the portal, that's great, but it's going to be very potentially variable year over year. You're going to have to hit, and it's a rug that can get pulled out from under you very quickly. Just ask Florida State how quickly you can go from looking like you're on top of the world to missing on a portal class and you're 2-10 before you know it. Lots of other stuff happened to get Florida State there, but you live by the portal, you die by the portal. That's still a rule that I think applies in college football in 2026. And Tech, they are stockpiling and they're building back with some younger guys to backfill some of those depth positions. I think that's a good strategy for them. But yeah, this next class looks like it's going to, at least on paper, check all the boxes that they need to stay right at the top of the Big 12.
Yeah, and I drew a lot of flack on Twitter when I put out one of our preseason lists projecting Texas Tech to be the most dangerous offense for 2026. And I think for all those reasons that you just listed, I think schedule absolutely factors in, right? So this is not just in a vacuum. But I am high on the Red Raiders continuing to build. They've got some elite young coordinators, and I think all the momentum is going the right direction out there in Lubbock. Elsewhere around the Big 12, what we got right. Quick shout out to our friends up in Ohio. Moving on from head coach Brian Smith, but listen, the Bobcats pulled off a Herculean upset, getting West Virginia early in the season. I think week 2, if I'm not mistaken. Rich Rod being a year away from being a year away. I think we had West Virginia pegged pretty nicely there. We had Utah hitting the over. We had Colorado going under. Quick shout outs for our crystal ball there. And as we transition from what we got right to what we got wrong, there was a big discrepancy, a major discrepancy that you and I had in our Big 12 picks. I was not as high on Kansas State this year, and I ended up taking the under. I think it was 7. Was it 7.5, 8.5? I ended up telling you to go under. You had them winning the Big 12 championship game, and that went off the rails very quickly.
It went off the rails before week 1, brother. Like it was in Ireland, that second half in Ireland, where just nothing was going right. I think Dylan Edwards got hurt on the first, not even the first play from scrimmage. I think it was a punt return.
A punt return, yeah.
Dylan Edwards got hurt. So the season was off the rails before they even took an offensive snap. And then you lose to Army, it got to the point where they were just finding creative ways to lose, and you never want to have your team being described that way. And it ended with Chris Kleiman being asked to no longer be the head coach, and I think that was a good decision.
And we had that discussion, kind of privately. I don't remember if we ever brought that to the air, But in our group
It was
text,
in our group text several times as I
yeah,
was
Garrett and I
going
were
through
like,
it.
okay, Trey, like, at what point does Chris just kind of have to walk away from this?
I feel like I've been the most consistent Kansas State supporter on this show, and I
Yeah.
really love the program. I love the vibes around Manhattan. I love the fan base, members of the fan base that I've gotten to interact with online. I really feel like I shouldn't feel an emotional connection to Kansas State. I have no personal connection there, but through our show, I certainly have built some connection to that school. And I was going through it with you guys, man, like every week, just living and dying by these crazy ways that they were trying to finding a way to lose. And I am optimistic for the future for Kansas State, but as also an Aggie fan that saw Colin Klein firsthand, I hope that he gives you more attention than he gave the offense the last couple weeks of the season for Texas A&M. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and yeah, I think the big questions for Kansas State, I know this is moving more towards projecting than, simply grading that pick, but I think that Klein has a level of creativity that I don't think we fully got to see in College Station, right? I mean, when he came to Aggie Land, we were watching film of the offensive line doing all kinds of stunts. I mean, spinning in place and running counters, against the grain. It was just there was a whole lot that fired up the imagination. And did we see some of that? Absolutely. We sure did. No doubt about that. Not going to take everything away from him, but I do wonder if now, as he goes back to his roots, kind of goes back to his, alma mater home, if that helps him unlock something. And I wonder if, having full reign of the offense, not just calling his scheme, but also conforming to Mike Elko's scheme. I mean, that was, one thing that I think Texas A&M fans took at least some solace over as Klein left out the door was, hey, we're not going back to square one. Like Elko and Klein were simpatico on what the offense needed to look like. And maybe that was why we didn't see some of the more crazy things that we'd seen in Kansas State. But I'm curious to see what he looks like when he's got full control of the operation, when he is the head honcho, obviously a young head coach. We've seen that go really well in some cases. We've seen that flame out in others. But I do think overall, the folks in Manhattan have a lot to look forward to. Maybe not in year one. We'll see what Avery Johnson looks like. And I guess, is this his final collegiate year?
Should be a senior year, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, so we'll see if he's got one more kind of all gas no brakes effort in him, or if we're going to be fighting in the parking lot a little bit more after games.
Well, and that's really the key to Kansas State. For as much as Chris Kleiman, I think does get a lot of the blame, and as the head coach, it all does eventually fall on your shoulders. My goodness, there's an earthquake in the other room in my house. I think Avery Johnson's development as a passer is what's going to make or break Kansas State. And we said that this year. I thought he would take a jump in year 1 to year 2 as a full-time starter, whether that was the scheme or whether that was just not doing the individual work, whatever that was, that jump did not happen. And so for them to actually be a championship contender, you have to be multidimensional on offense. And we'll see if Colin Klein can unlock some potential that maybe wasn't there under Chris Kleiman.
Yeah, one of the errors that I have to own is Arizona State going back to back in Arlington. I had them making another appearance in Jerry World. Obviously, had them losing to Texas Tech. We just covered that, but partly I feel like this was maybe not selling the stock at its absolute peak, getting a little bit greedy, trying to ride it out for just another, give me another 5-10% worth of profit here. But also, as you mentioned off the top, Sam Levitt going down and immediately having to pivot to the Jeff Sims experience. That was not in the cards. That was not in the playbook for those who were buying Arizona State. I did feel like it was anticlimactic, right? I mean, Kenny Dillingham had the college football world buzzing. Sam Levitt was the guy and had already transferred in from Michigan State, had found his home, had found the coaching fit, had found the roster fit. I mean, they made some magic out there in Tempe, especially after the way that Herm Edwards left that program. And now with Levitt in Baton Rouge and kind of the way that he left the team and, really just had the Irish goodbye, it felt like I'm left wishing that there had been a better ending to that story for Arizona State, just because, that team in 2024, they were special.
Yeah, and I still think that the ceiling for that program is absolutely competing for Big 12 championships. I think that Kenny Dillingham is a fantastic coach. I think he is right at home.
Hmm.
People forget that he had a lot of suitors as well in
He
this
did.
coaching carousel, and he stayed right there in Tempe, regardless of what his quarterback decided to do in the transfer portal. So I think that's a great sign for the future of the program that he is staying put. He is seems to be committed to building something there for at least the short-term future, and they're going to be able to get talented players there. We've already
Sure.
seen him be able to find the guys that can run exciting offense and have dudes on defense as well. But yeah, I think long term, I would still hold some stock in Arizona State because they are going to eventually bounce back. I don't think a program with that proximity to talent in places like California, Texas isn't too far away. Talk
Hmm.
about getting guys transferring back home. It's a matter of when, not if, that they are bouncing back and competing for conference championships again.
Yeah, and like I think so many coaches that got extensions from their current employers, added support to the NIL fund and support to the exterior coaching staff, or like the auxiliary coaching staff, I guess is the better word. Dillingham certainly made sure that his staff was taken care of, that his players will be taken care of, and that support didn't just end because the team did not reach those championship aspirations, but that it continues to push the limits, continues to build a foundation that program can grow on. And we talk about the Big 12 being Fury Road, where things can change in an instant, right? I mean, we thought Kansas was going to have their moment in the sun. You thought Kansas State was finally going to, clinch another championship. We were very high on Iowa State for this season, and it can fall away just as quickly as it can burst onto the scene, right? And so I think having all the proper support and uh, funding, I guess for lack of a better word, is hugely important as Arizona State looks to chase another championship and continue to establish themselves as a top, I don't know, 3-4 program at the minimum in the Big 12 right now, which to your point, I think they can do. You had to own Kansas State. You also mentioned off the top that one of us was much, much higher on a team down the Brazos River than some on this show. Baylor absolutely let me down. And as I did last episode, I would like to give you a reading from our preview over in our Substack. Baylor is going over this total, which I believe was 7.5. The schedule is very challenging, extremely so, even. But I love the Bears getting Auburn at home in week 1. My prediction is that the Bears start 5-1 with wins over ASU, SMU, and K State before hitting their bye week. The trip to TCU is tricky, and we'll see what Utah's offense can do. But I'm very high on the Bears' chances to make it to Arlington. Trey,
In your defense, they did beat two of those teams that you
they
just
did.
listed.
They did. They absolutely did. They kind of got smoked by, well, I guess it was a close game on the scoreboard against ASU. It just, I don't know. That was a messy game. It felt like they punted all their chances to win. It felt like they should not have beaten SMU. The Ponies really just let them back in, that kind of opened the door and made them a sandwich on their way in. They did beat Kansas State though. So, there is that. But
Another
Baylor,
game they had no business winning, but Chris Kleiman and company. You talk about opening the door and making them a sandwich. That was
yeah.
Kansas State against Baylor.
Yeah, that was a 3-course dinner, I think, that Dave Aranda enjoyed. Didn't enjoy much else, though. It was ugly football played by the Bears. The offense put up points, and Sawyer Robertson threw for like all the yards, but that defense was atrocious. The secondary couldn't stop a nosebleed. And overall, Baylor felt like they were very non-competitive, that they were on a much different playing field, even from a physicality standpoint. I think that was very evident in their week 1 opener against Auburn, to the effect, Trey, that you had people in the national media going, okay, here's the Auburn we've been waiting for. Hugh Freeze has his quarterback. It's time, physicality, Kendrick Falk, like it's ready to go. And yeah, Auburn didn't exactly hit that plateau either.
Yeah, all I remember about that Baylor Auburn game is just thinking, surely they're gonna, stack the box against Jackson Arnold once,
Yeah.
right?
Once.
Surely
One time.
they'll apply a spy that will be disciplined to watch a quarterback draw once, right?
Yeah.
And the answer to both of those was no. They were more than willing to let Jackson Arnold run for, I think, 300 yards. I have not fact checked that, but it was a
Yeah.
lot.
It was all the
Yeah.
yards.
And that was kind of a microcosm of the season. You're absolutely right. The offense was fun. It had pieces, but for a defensive minded coach, Dave Aranda sure has left a lot to be desired in the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting to the point where he took over the defense this year. He took over defensive play calling, and that was what gave me so much belief that that defense would be good. We had several guests on the show that all kind of espoused, hey, Baylor's so much more athletic in the back end. It feels like this is their year that the defense takes a nice step forward, and could not have been further from the truth. They also had a bunch of exits via the transfer portal as well. So I don't know what you do if you're a Baylor Bear fan. It was an ugly year. It might get even worse. We'll see. DJ Lagway comes in, obviously, to replace Sawyer Robinson. So maybe the offense will be fun. Defense, I don't know. Other mea culpas in the Big 12, we were lower on Arizona than y'all were. When I remember very, very distinctly, we both kind of were doubting the Jimmies and the Joes, where they ranked the Wildcats, Brent Brennan's squad out there in Tucson. But Arizona tied for 4th in the Big 12. They go 9-4 with a nice bounce back season. And then we were too low on Cincinnati and BYU as well. I think I gave the case for Cincinnati being competitive. That ending felt very 2024 version 2, right? Where first half of the season it was good, we were vibing, and then in the second half the wheels just fell off. And once they lost the running game, once they lost Evan Pryor to injury, it wasn't the same up there in Cincinnati. So
Yeah, and I think with BYU, didn't the Jake Retzlaff news break like maybe a week before we were recording our Big 12 preview? And so we were just like, okay, yeah, I guess it's freshman Bear Bachmeier. And sure enough, the freshman came in and balled out. I think we were cautioning people not to think BYU was going to fall off a cliff.
Correct.
But I think that was the expectation was probably like 7-5 for BYU this year would be really nice with a freshman quarterback, and they far exceeded that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did not have them in Arlington. So we would love to know what you got right in the Big 12, what you got wrong. If you want to play along with us in our YouTube comments at 3Tech Pod is where you can find us on Instagram and Twitter as well if you want to write in. Trey, let's move over to the All-Face Conference, the ACC. Listen, we just get it out of the way. Clemson was wrong. Both of us had them winning the league at 11-1. We were all aboard Clemson storming into the playoff, this being the year that Dabo was back up on top.
Do you remember?
Didn't happen.
Do you remember who you had them losing to off the top of your head?
Ooh, I think Georgia Tech. I had them losing to Georgia Tech in week 3, right?
Well, nailed that one. I want to say I had them losing to LSU and then winning out. I was also very high on LSU. I did not see the warning signs of the offensive line.
Well, we did. I mean, not to make this about LSU, but we did talk about that with the Bayou Bengals. We just, I don't know. I think we had it doesn't work for them, but maybe it'll be different for us. I think moment. But yeah, listen, Clemson. It was as bad, if not worse, than what we saw. They were just undisciplined. The defense from NFL scouts, we're in draft season now, hearing NFL draft scouts talk about them, talking about very talented players on the defensive side, but really questioning the hustle, not really trusting if they know ball. If you're here in the DFW Metroplex, they've talked about, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, I believe is the linebacker / edge rusher. And, there are voices, very popular voices here in this market that are going, great athlete. If, find someone who can teach them how to play, but they do not have a plan when they're going after the quarterback, when they're going after the ball carrier. It's just see ball, get ball. And obviously in the NFL, that is not going to be a recipe for success most of the time. I'm just kind of left wondering what Clemson does to pick up the pieces to try and get back on top. Obviously they went to the transfer portal last year, and that was part of why we were so bullish on them. It's like, hey, look, they're using the portal. They're getting really high quality talent at edge rusher, at wide receiver. Like, surely this team is going to be, a championship caliber program, and that just could not have been further from the truth.
I'm really wondering what the future is for the Clemson Tigers, and maybe we can get Moose on at some point this offseason and kind of just wax poetic about that a little bit in a way only he can. But I don't know what you find confidence in, because you're starting over at quarterback, you are starting over at other key positions on the defensive side of the ball, and you have a coach that by all accounts, it feels like the game has passed him by. I think that this season, obviously, they made the playoff in 2025 or 2024, won the ACC, so they're not that far removed. But it's really hard to start painting the picture of Dabo finding something to get the mojo back in that program. And I don't know, I don't know how you fire a guy that's won that many national championships. I don't know what that even looks like. It's just a really rough place to be if you're a Clemson Tiger fan right now.
Yeah. A lot of questions, a lot of jumping into the unknown, because as you mentioned, like if you do decide to move on, so you go 8-4, maybe 9-3, and Clemson just decides, no, like we have the talent, we should be chasing playoff berths and national championships and conference championships. Like, what do you do? Who do you upgrade over Dabo with? It'll be
Do
just
they have the talent? I think that's a legitimate question. Do they have the talent in 2020, like for how you build a roster in 2026? Do they have the talent you need to actually compete?
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, on paper, I'd say yes. Clearly, that didn't pan out on the field, right? I mean, it just did not click offensively. Garrett Riley was not the guy that they thought they were getting at the offensive coordinator spot. He's back in. Did he come back to TCU? Where did Garrett Riley go?
Want to? That's a great question.
Yeah, I'll fill the space. Yeah, but Garrett Riley just, I think the offense had so much potential. They go to Adam Randall, obviously, as the running back. They, were hoping that 5-star running back Gideon would kind of jump up and claim more of a lion's share of that load. And Randall was good. I mean, the running game, when it could get going, certainly showed its flashes, but man, there wasn't a lot of continuity. You didn't feel confident in the offense's ability to move the ball in a key situation. And then for the first time in a long time, as Tom Allen came in to do the defense, you started to not trust their ability to get a stop when you really needed it, right? A turnover to change the momentum, to defend Death Valley. It was just like all the things that you'd previously been able to hang your hat on if you were a Tigers fan kind of went out the window.
The Google machine has Garrett Riley as the new quarterback coach at Missouri. So,
okay.
Interesting career move there. And of course, the guy that they brought in to fix all the offensive issues is Chad Morris. So that should go swimmingly.
Yes, because that went so great the first time that he was there.
He was pretty elite as an OC for a long time at Clemson.
Didn't he have a fall off though?
I think it was after he left, he went and coached SMU, was okay. And then he went to Arkansas and went like 1-11 and was fired in like year 2, I think.
See, I remember, I thought part of that fall off started at Clemson, but maybe not. Listen, I know the Clemson fan base is split on him coming back, and maybe that's some of that is seeing what he did after, or I guess failed to do after he left Clemson, and souring on him a little bit. I don't know. It was not a name that a lot of people had towards the top of their wish list. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. It also reeks of Dabo just not really knowing what to do, nor having a network outside of his little
trying to get the band back together.
Yeah, trying to get the band back together, maybe out of necessity, just because he doesn't really have a network outside of his little I don't want to call it a cult, but whatever little group that he's collected over there.
A study group. Neighborhood association. Now, that is one, I mean, last thought on Clemson. That is one of the knocks on Dabo is you look up and down the support staff and it's all former players. It's all guys that have played for him in the past. It's not necessarily just this collection of leading minds or coaches in need of, a fresh start like Alabama had with Nick Saban. It's kind of guys that might have been on speed dial purely for vibes. And that's not a great indicator of success in my humble opinion.
I would tend to agree. I think that getting some outside voices that can challenge your ideas might be a good idea.
Yes, little message boardy, I think, with the potential echo chamber effect. The ACC though was your conference back in the preview season. You wrote the previews for that. So what else did we get wrong when it came to the ACC?
Yeah, I think we were, too low on Miami in the sense that I guess correct technically, and neither of us picking them to make the ACC championship game, but we both had them at 9-3. So we'll give ourselves a mark off on that. We thought that I think the general thought on Miami was they have the talent, but they just have never done it. And they finally proved us wrong. They finally were able to get over the hump and win the games that they really needed to. Turned out that those games were at the beginning of the year, and those were fantastic wins that carried them through the low point in the middle of the season when they lost to Louisville and SMU. But no denying the run that they made at the end of the year showed the ceiling that talent that we were kind of doubting. We were way too optimistic on North Carolina. Both of us had them at 7-5, and just kind of, I know for me personally, I was banking on Bill Belichick not being just a complete sideshow.
Yeah.
And it turned out that he was in fact just a sideshow.
Well, and I remember like when we finally got to North Carolina, the whole Jordan Hudson saga had been going on. We had steered clear of that iceberg for as long as we possibly could. And I think the discussion that we had was like, ESPN wanted to get North Carolina to the playoff in that opening broadcast against TCU. I mean, the hype machine was going at full force. It was honestly kind of disgusting
And when they went up 7-0, don't lie and say that you weren't a little bit bought into that, because I think
the first drive was like, okay, like, Gio Lopez looked good. This was the guy that not too many people knew about at South Alabama. Obviously, you and I had seen him and had espoused some of that success that we were banking on. But after that, I mean, once the defense showed that they were about as effective as I don't know, a six pack of pudding cups at stopping the ball, we knew it was going to go sideways very, very quickly. And so I think getting back to the point in the preview show, I think we tried to kind of hedge both of our bets. Like, sure, we can maybe see the vision, and he's bringing on a lot of pro personnel to run this like an NFL franchise, and that probably pays off. And they've got some talented guys, but like not yet, right? Not yet. This isn't the year. And instead, we still ended up holding bags because we just didn't anticipate them being an absolute dumpster fire.
Well, yeah, and I think we thought once the ball is spotted, once it's literally the NFL GOAT on the sidelines coaching a game of football, all that noise would fade away. Then he's talking to his 24-year-old girlfriend on the sideline during a game, and you're just like, okay, buddy, like we can't do this. This is not going to work. So I would be shocked if he makes it through 2026. I don't know about you, but that's about where I'm at with Bill.
Well, once the money dries up, I mean that'll be it. He did not. This is not an NFL show, but seeing that he did not get in to the NFL Hall of Fame on the first ballot, like he probably deserved, I think shows you that the sentiment around Belichick has soured, and obviously he alienated as many people with like the Patriots organization that he could. He's not done himself any favors with this little sideshow that he's curated with the help of his girlfriend. But I think as soon as the money starts to dry up and the athletic department gets wind that hey, those checks might not be getting cut in Q3, Q4, suddenly I think that becomes a very different discussion, and North Carolina may cut bait, as they say. Yeah, listen, North Carolina is what it is. We did not though have enough faith in Virginia, and you've mentioned Moose already. Walk on Moose on Twitter, friend of the show. He had them at 9-3 this preseason and got all the flack in the world for it. Shout out to Moose for doing the homework. digging your foxhole and then staying in it as the barrages just rained down, because I felt like he was like the only guy in America that actually believed in Tony Elliott as much as he did.
Yeah, and even he didn't have enough faith, right? Didn't they go 10-2
I
in the
think
regular
so.
season? Yeah. So I mean, shout out to Moose. Great pick. I think he picked him in our win total improvement draft as well and got some
Yeah.
nice benefit there. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I think the approach we took too was, yeah, schedule looks good. They have some experience. Obviously, was it Chandler Morris coming over
Yes, from TCU.
from TCU? Lots of good potential. But is Tony Elliott actually going to be able to break through and have a solid season? And then they have the Friday night game against Florida State, where maybe the most epic field rush of all time that just spurred them on towards an appearance in the ACC championship game, and just a fantastic season from Tony Elliott and the boys. I hope that they can keep that momentum going. I know it's going to be really difficult to keep and acquire talent at a school like Virginia, where football may or may not be the number one love of everybody, and it might be sharing some attention with basketball and maybe even baseball. But fantastic 2025 from Tony Elliott, and I hope that he can keep it going.
I went to a watch party the night that they beat Florida State, and it was for a pick'em league that I'm in, and it was me and the random guy in the group that was a graduate of the University of Virginia that had picked UVA. Everybody else was hard on the Seminoles, talking up a storm early in that game. And then to be the only one in the room to comfortably sit back and watch the Who's not only stick around, but take the lead, force the turnover, obviously. Had to sweat it out a little bit with that did Deuce Robinson catch the ball inbounds, out of bounds deal. But that was a very sweet night for yours truly. As you mentioned, was not as high on them, obviously, in the preseason. But I think once they started to prove, hey, we've got some of the pieces in place to do this, as a show, I think collectively we very much started to go, okay, this might be different. And whatever Florida State was after beating Alabama, listen, that was a side project, but it was a true joy to watch Virginia. The way that they built the program this year, the way that they used the portal, the defense was very good. And even to get to the ACC championship game, I know the way it ended was not nearly as satisfying as whose fans wanted, but to get there, I think was finally the vote of confidence that Tony Elliott needed. Now he's got to go do it again, or at least continue to win with the program that he's built up.
Yeah, might be a little bit of a rebuild situation this year, but
Sure.
I think he's proven that he can establish upward trajectory and actually have it pay off. So hopefully he can have that cycle begin again. And speaking of Florida State, you want to shift over to what we got right?
Let's do it. How about you take us through what we got right?
Well, we'll start with the Seminoles because I think there was some hype, definitely within the program from one Tommy Castellanos, that they were going to, bounce all the way back and be right back into ACC championship contention. I didn't pull it up exactly, but I remember I did the math on the probability that Florida State would make that jump based on SP Plus rankings. It wasn't great. It was
Yeah.
somewhere in like the 10 to 15% chances that they made the jump needed to actually compete. Both of us were out on them. They had the awesome moment against Alabama week one, but after that, it was really the Florida State or the Virginia game, I should say, that sent them spiraling. And that has been the problem under Mike Norvell. When it's going great, it is fantastic. The vibes are high. You can't beat them. They are, just going to win a bunch of games in a row. When they lose one, just like it did this year, it sets them spiraling to where it's really hard for them to recover.
It did not ever feel like Mike Norvell had controlled the program, right? Once it got off its axis again. And to their credit, when they beat Alabama at home, there was some belief. There was a thought that, okay, maybe he has figured it out. Maybe Tommy Castellanos just needed to get out of Chestnut Hill. Who knows? But then it very quickly became they are who we thought they were. And I just could not be more out, I think, on a big time powerhouse program than I am on Florida State. I mean, the narrative is truly shifting towards Norvell had one good season, and that's the outlier, not the losses being the outlier, right? Not the steady building of Memphis and obviously getting Florida State to where they should have been, a playoff team. All of that has faded into the background very, very quickly and very dramatically, I think. And I just don't really see a reason to buy back into Florida State until they start to show some signs of life.
Yeah, there's nothing that they're doing that I think, when the Knowles coin phenomenon started on this show, right? You had the Jordan Travis run at the end of a season that was, by all accounts, disappointing, but they had a good close, and you could see the build, you could see what they were building towards, and that eventually paid off in the season that where they should have been in the college football playoff in 2023, I think it was. But everything since then has just been an abject disaster. I talked about it earlier with Texas Tech, that Florida State is the cautionary tale of building completely through the portal, because you are just one misevaluated class or one too shallow class away from everything collapsing underneath you, and proving that you had a house built on sand.
Yeah, and now, this offseason, as more and more financial records become available, like Florida State is one of the athletic departments running most in a deficit. I mean, they are bleeding all of the cash. That's part of the reason why I think Mike Norvell is still employed, because his buyout was just too much for the Seminole boosters to stomach. Maybe that continues to buy him time. I mean, but it feels very much like he's a dead man walking, and until either he starts to win or they just make a wholesale change, the vibes are not healthy in Tallahassee. I don't know why you would buy into what feels like a dying athletic department, let alone a dying football program.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle that. Obviously, different schools have different priorities with the finances. I know they're doing the stadium renovation, so I don't know how that affects the financials too much, but I'm sure it's not helping when you need to pay off a buyout. But elsewhere in the ACC, we both had Louisville, Georgia Tech, and SMU contending to varying extents. I'm going to count all three of those as a win. They were all right there in the discussion. SMU was a fumbled bag away from playing in the ACC championship game for a second consecutive year, losing that game to Cal on the last week to set the possibility of Duke winning the ACC into motion. Speaking of Duke, we were both high on Duke. We both had them 9-3, so maybe a little too optimistic in the overall record, but we both said that they would be very dangerous. And lo and behold, they found a way to play for an ACC title.
They were that, if nothing else. They were dangerous.
To ACC teams. If you didn't play in the ACC, you blew them out. But if you were an ACC team, you had a lot of trouble with the Blue Devils.
That Duke team, man, was so comical. I mean, at times they could score all the points. At times they couldn't score any of the points. At times the defense was awesome and was forcing turnovers. And at other times, like that NC State game, I was pulling my hair out going, guys, get one stop. Just like anyway.
And the games against Virginia are the perfect microcosm of that, right? Because weren't they down like 35-3 or something like that the first time they played Virginia? And it was something, it might not have been that ridiculous, but they were down by quite a bit the first time they played Virginia, and then come back and beat them with the championship on the line at a neutral site in Charlotte. So very, very interesting. One of the most perplexing seasons of any team that I think we've covered on this show.
Forced a rule change.
Forced a rule change. And anytime you do that, I think your legacy is fully cemented, Mitch. I want to close on this one. This was my favorite moment of preview season. And I think
maybe your best bit from the last few years, to be honest.
We got to close the loop on it, because I think we kind of nailed it. It was Pitt needing a hot dog at the turn. If you recall, we looked at Pitt's schedule last year and we saw that they started 7-0, I think it was, in 2024. And then they just collapsed. They lost their last 6, including a bowl game in Detroit to a MAC team. Or I can't even remember who they lost to in that game. It was just wacky. But then we looked at the schedule in 2025 and it was setting up eerily similar. So what was the solution? Start hot build your momentum and grab that hot dog at the turn to fuel you through the second half. Now, I don't know if they ate the wrong hot dog or just didn't get, enough nutrients from the dog that they did choose, but they ran out of gas on a couple holes. They found some water hazards on the back nine with the Notre Dame game. That was maybe self-inflicted with Narduzzi saying that they didn't really need to win that one. But boy, did they find the stroke on the 17th hole and birdie that bad boy to get them coming back with that Georgia Tech win. That was a fantastic game to set up. They like quadruple bogeyed 18, but they're always going to remember 17 for that birdie that they chipped in and knocking off Georgia Tech in Atlanta.
Yeah, that one very much felt like I don't know, maybe like the long par 3 over water that you're just hoping to stick the landing, find terra firma. Maybe you pull out a top flight instead of your Pro V1, and they ended up sticking it to like 3 feet and made the birdie putt, right? Don't talk about the, like you said, the quad in front of the clubhouse on 18. We don't need to talk about that. But hey, when they're drinking beers at dinner that night, going home to their wives, given something to look forward to for that next round, we're talking about that birdie on 17.
Absolutely. And in the bigger picture, I think is it did show improvement, and it was a season that had a lot of adversity, right? Eli Stowers was what we were kind of banking on being healthy, and he gets benched, and they bring in the freshman to come in and try to right the ship as kind of a last ditch effort. And
Eli Holstein,
not Eli Stowers.
I was like, wait,
noted Vanderbilt tight end Eli Stowers.
yes.
Eli Holstein, I should say, gets benched, and they bring in the freshman, and he's a revelation, and that shows a lot of promise for what they can continue to build in the future in an ACC that outside of Miami is looking relatively wide open as we go into 2026.
ACC is going to be fascinating, man. I can't wait to get to the preview season to try and butter knife the margins because, there's a lot to be decided in this conference. Will Clemson come back? We've got, I think both Louisville and Clemson are going to be part of our What's Next series. I know that Louisville is. I need to connect with Moose, maybe get another voice from the Clemson sphere in there as well. But yeah, ACC is going to might be the new Big 12, to be honest. We might be kind of co-signing the Fury Road. We're going to have to come up with another analogy for the ACC, no doubt about it. But that'll do it for our grading review of our predictions from 2025 Big 12 ACC. Again, let us know your thoughts. If you were riding with us with those predictions, maybe you faded the boys, maybe you made some money from it. We'd love to know. At 3Tech Pod on all of our social media is where you can find us. For Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And until next time,